You're listening to Hashtag Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters. I am Regina Larco, your host, and what you're about to hear has been years in the making. Today, we are wrapping up a very special season. In Hashtag Impact Season 5, we highlighted changemakers working towards the Sustainable Development Goals. It's been our longest and most downloaded to date. We won several awards and celebrated engaging with our brilliant guests, our amazing listeners, and our purpose-driven sponsors. And as Season 5 launched, so did my podcast coaching program, where I have supported others to launch and grow their own beautiful podcasts. I committed to showing up, even on the days that were particularly hard. And it has been a beautiful tradition to reflect on the journey with our co-host Amanda Williams, who has been moderating our grand finales ever since Season 1. I'm so proud that we are still here through it all, just like the brilliant individuals that we get to speak to in our podcast. And I'm so grateful that you are on this journey with us. No matter if you've just discovered Hashtag Impact recently, or if you've been one of our loyal listeners for many years. Today, as we take stock of what we achieved, we also look at what's ahead. We talk about how we coped with it all and which moments stood out. And somehow we stumble into the conversation, not really sure where or how to even begin.
Oh, gosh. Are you going to add the intro later? Are you going to do the intro later so we can just start?
You can just start. I'm going to do I always record the intros later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forget how we do this. It's been a long time.
How did you do this? Oh my God, I don't know.
This?
I think, did you kind of intro it just like, oh, we are here to, oh no, I said like, oh, and I hand over the mic to you. Gosh. I mean, that's so funny. That can just be the start of it, you know,
Yep.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Welcome to Hashtag Impact, dear listeners. We were just thinking about who is actually going to do the intro because the last time we recorded the Season 4 finale, that was like 3 years back.
Yeah.
And now we can even remember who is actually doing the intro. But Amanda, so great to just have you here with me today to follow a beautiful tradition that we had ever since recording the Season 1 finale back in 2017, face to face.
Oh, God, face to face back in the day.
When that was still a thing, when we were still in the same city.
We were both still in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
A lot has changed.
And now, fast forward here today, I'm sitting here in my home recording studio in my new home here in Vienna, Austria. And you are sitting in your, well, not that new home anymore, right? It's been a few years now that you've been in Australia.
A couple of years in Australia, in Sydney. Yeah. A new home, though. I've only been here a few months in this particular home in Sydney. So I'm watching the sun go down and on the other side of the world. And we're reminiscing about Hong Kong, somewhere in the middle. So when Season 5 kicked off, we were both still living, I think, in Hong Kong, actually.
Yes.
A lot has changed. It's, the COVID years, it's been a long couple of years.
We recorded that before COVID.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the intros, all of the early teaser episodes and things like that. We definitely did. So, wow. So we're here to reflect on a very busy couple of years of episodes where I think you were able to take such a great theme, and that's why you've been able to kind of keep going with it. There are 17 sustainable development goals, so much material to be working with. looking at organizations who are exemplifying and the SDGs. So thinking, when you kicked off, season 5, did you have any idea that it would go so long and that you would end up finishing it in Vienna?
Oh my gosh. I mean, no. I'm trying now to go back to that day we recorded in the co-working space
in Sai-Kung,
where I used to live, kind of like a suburb. Could you call it a suburb in Hong Kong? Well, a big suburb. And there's always like this excitement about wrapping up a season and reflecting on that. There's always so much gratefulness for the learnings that were in the season before. It was the same back then, and it is the same now. And there's also this anticipation of, the beauty of it is no matter how much you have planned out, and of course we had a lot planned out, but in that moment when we recorded, I was also getting ready to go on maternity leave. I had a big bump and I was expecting my 3rd baby. And I've always been very mindful of planning those times of my life out when it comes to the work and the podcast, to keep it going, and to have all these episodes already scheduled so that I could take some time off and slow down and be there for my newborn. But yeah, then, like for the rest of the world, no one had anticipated a pandemic, and no one had anticipated how that changed our lives and the way we work as well. And at that point also, no, I had not anticipated that we would move back to my hometown of Vienna. So yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely been quite a ride. And I think, though, season 5 was always intended to be a very global one, as you brought in a lot of additional co-hosts intentionally to get stories from around the world. And so this is just adding to that global flair, finishing up in Vienna.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense.
I shouldn't have said I didn't plan it out that way. I should have said yeah, of course. That was like my plan all along. I promised you listeners that it would be the most global season ever. And it really has become the most global season ever. It has become, a beautiful season where we had voices from across the globe. And it's been really beautiful to also work with the guest hosts that joined, that also at that point when we recorded the last finale, that at that point I didn't even know yet, there were already some guest hosts lined up, but there were, how many more joined during the course of that? Maybe another 3 or 4 that just came along for the ride. And that's been wonderful. It's such a joy to work with these guest hosts, to really encourage them that they have what it takes to also do their own recording, and coach them in a way that they become this really empowered podcasters as well, that are recording really inspiring episodes that are trending on #impact ever since they've been on air. So that's so like really heartwarming. Like I feel it in my chest. I'm touching my chest right now. That it makes me so happy.
Yeah, and I think it's was so appropriate for this theme of the SDGs, because it is a global language of impact and change making. And so to hear stories from South Korea about North Korean refugees, from Bali, from Hong Kong, from Vienna, from Germany, all over the place, I think really added to the sense, that global sense and that common language everyone speaks, trying to make a difference in the places that they are. And it was a lovely thing to have some of the different guest hosts bring out the different stories and their own perspectives as well. The guest host, I think it's a really interesting thing, because that's really part of the impact that you're making, is inspiring others to tell these stories and to get involved and reach out to organizations and help cheerlead and share what's happening. So if any of these guest hosts going on to do more podcasts, or have they stayed involved in the space in any way?
Yeah, definitely. So Carol is now working with a think tank that has also launched their own podcast. So that's amazing. So she could come in and bring her learnings that she had on the podcast to that organization. So that's wonderful. I know Avani, one of our producers, who did an amazing episode on mental health in the context of during the early days of the COVID pandemic. She went on to do, I think it's her master's. I don't want to say anything wrong, but in journalism, and she is now also working in that field, in that space. We have Joanne and Juhi that are all studying to make their own impact in the world, and I know that being part of #Impact for a certain time in their life, was important to them. To, I'm really drawn to this next generation, of young women from diverse backgrounds that are taking their space and owning it, and being brave and courageous to do something that I wish I would have done the courage to do when I was their age, So I think there's this really like a pride I feel around that. I had the privilege that for a certain time I could be part of that journey, and I'm connected to all of them. We have like this WhatsApp group, and then they share their updates, or we send voice messages, like private voice messages also to each other to keep each other posted. And it's just, it makes me so proud to see them go after their goals and dreams and make their impact in the world. It's really amazing to see that. I wish I would have had that, drive. Well, I don't want to say I didn't have that drive, yeah. And I think it's only human to also have your doubts and question it, right? But they took the step, and they reached out, at a moment when they thought they would want to learn some, or they could contribute to something here at the podcast. And it's sometimes even just writing that message and saying, there is something I can offer, even if I haven't graduated from university yet, or even if I don't have anything to show for yet when it comes to, and they all had already a lot to show for, don't get me wrong. They were already doing amazing things in their high schools as well. But still, ask yourself, your younger self, how many times have you questioned if you could really do that, or if you had what it takes? And in that sense, they inspire me greatly. And it's just such a privilege that they have said yes to becoming part of it.
Yeah. And I think, it's so right, getting more diverse, more, diversity in terms of where people are from and the ages they are and the gender and everything, more diversity in terms of those voices setting the narrative, I think is great for all of us, right? They're going to highlight different things, because what's important to their life and relevant to their life is different to what's relevant to our life in the moment. I think, Avani's episode on mental health was a really, really good example, because I have no idea what the experience of, high schoolers in Hong Kong with mental health is. And to hear from somebody who recently been there, and young people who've set up their own organizations, was just fantastic to understand that perspective, whilst celebrating, another change maker. Yeah, it is. It was a really nice thing to hear so many different voices on this season. So in addition to lots and lots of really interesting hosts on season 5, you also had an amazing, amazing range of guests.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And, I think the coming at it from very, very different kind of small scale organizations, larger organizations, coming into some people who are working to help tell the impact stories of other organizations. The range was really fantastic. Thinking back on all of those wonderful stories, the ones that you actually got to do yourself, the interviews you got to do yourself, is there anybody in particular that really inspired you?
They all did. I always say that, they all did. And there was one learning that I just shared recently on the New Year special that I had to cut out, because I thought that was just sometimes the guests share something and you look at it then from a different perspective. They teach you something, not just about the sustainable development goals. There were aha moments there as well. I think in particular, Pat Dwyer really inspired me. She was very early on in the season talking about it, coming from a corporate governance kind of perspective as well, with the consulting that she does in the space. So that was always amazing. Or Benita from Encompass, who is just in the courage, how she showed up and how she went into this, really owning the space, in Hong Kong, where it was not on the table that much. She really carved out a space for her there, I think, where she opened a lot of corporations' eyes to why it is they should care, and she did it in a way that was engaging for the employees. So that was super inspiring, looking at it from the SDG topical side. But there were a lot of the personal growth stories as well that I think are beyond just let's say the label or the branding of the SDGs, that we can all take on into our lives. And that was Jo Hayes. And I know you spoke to her as well. That's why you're smiling now, because for sure it was wonderful for me to also bring her back on the show. And so that little snippet, you can hear it in the New Year episode, or even better if you go back to the full episode as well, where she's shared about how she looks at her comfort zone, and that we all do that, right? When we are doing something new and we want to make a difference in the world, we often go at it from the angle that we think now we are leaving our comfort zone, like when you're doing an international move, even moving back to Vienna, it's my hometown, but I'm changed. So it's somehow not my comfort zone anymore now, coming back, living at home, because what does home even mean? But okay, now I'm getting too philosophical and off topic. But that reference that she gave of, she looks at it the way that she's not leaving her comfort zone, but with everything she does, the way she's growing her organization and her impact, is that she is expanding her comfort zone. And just to have that visual is one that I go back to so much now with everything I do in life, really. So you see, the guests, all of them, they have a profound, impact on me, just because I think that's the gift that the format of podcasting is as well. That you and me now, Amanda, we are honoring the moment, even though we had busy days, and sometimes we also, struggle with things that we share off the record. But then, we press record and we put something there for our listeners to feel encouraged by, that we all feel that sometimes it's too hard to show up, for the difference we want to make in the world, for the organization we want to build, the new job we took on, the family that we are raising. And then you go back to all these episodes you heard on #Impact, and I listen and I go back and they are with me, these guests, and they remind me of, I'm not alone in this. There is a community of individuals that commit to showing up even though it feels scary sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think you surrounded yourself by such an amazing group of people over the years, not just in season 5, but before. I'm sure all of us who have some element of connection with Hong Kong will have seen that Tatler Hong Kong, which is a big magazine there, did a big episode on kind of female leaders in Hong Kong. And I went down the list and I was like, oh, Regina's interviewed them and her and her and her. There were so many. I think two of the winners were featured on the podcast. It is an amazing community that you have kind of curated, really, by bringing them together and sharing these stories. And it is, whether working for an NGO, whether working in a business that is more impact oriented, when you have that additional drive to be delivering change in the world, I think you have to be a little bit harder skinned, a little bit tougher. And then you are, some great life lessons then to be shared for all of us that are, whether we're sitting back just cheering people on or trying to emulate that drive and that desire to change the world.
Yeah, and that's yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because I had exactly the same aha moment when I saw that Tatler article. And Tatler is Tatler, yeah, let's be honest. They have a little bit of a different range than we have, and I'm definitely aiming for Tatler kind of audience range at some point for #Impact, aim big and bold goals and all that. But of course, #Impact is not there just yet. So seeing that, it was also, I had the same kind of aha moment of, I know that we, by spotlighting certain people in the community that haven't had the big features just yet, but giving them a platform to, really highlight them and show the world why other people should also care about what they do, it of course also leads to more opportunities for them. We always hope for that. We always hope for that. And there was, I think, the one that is in particular that made me so happy is the founder of Teens Key. Yeah. Belinda, our amazing co-host based in Hong Kong. She was so passionate about speaking to Bonnie, and it's a beautiful recording. And I'm so excited that it all worked out the way it did, and that was really a moment for her to get to be put in the spotlight. Someone who is so humble and doing so impactful work. And Belinda, I will never forget that. Like how excited she was about being able to do that interview with her. I was like, oh my God, I've been thinking, the first time I met her, I knew we have to bring her on #Impact. And it makes me, I will link all these, by the way, for you listeners. Yeah. I'll link you to these episodes that you don't have to scroll back to the many years that we had. because definitely that's been a highlight of this season as well.
Yeah, that is one where I've met Bowie in person as well, and her energy and enthusiasm, it comes across on the podcast so nicely. It is just like meeting her. It's a really good one, and I know a lot of, as you say, I think there's an element of providing that spotlight, and for some of these smaller organizations, these smaller change makers, just sharing that somebody's in their corner and, here to help and bring them to that next step. I think even, Jo Hayes is one, listening to the episode we had with her a couple of years ago, and the one now, and the more recent one where she's, she really stepped up. She was doing great things at the Women's Foundation, but to kind of move into that CEO role at an international organization, she's really found herself in this role, and you can again kind of hear that additional bit of confidence and excitement and in her voice in the different episode as well, and the newer episode. So it's really lovely to see. Now though, I think early on we were doing kind of check-ins with everybody that had been in the first season and things like that, but now there are so many people that have been interviewed on #Impact Podcast. I think it'd be impossible to do a catch up with everybody, but it was a lovely way to kind of see that a few people are still going strong by seeing that article come out. I think Alicia Loy was also from Wise. She was also one of the ones, and Alicia. You spoke to her quite a few seasons ago. So, and that's just Wise HK still going strong. So yeah, it was really nice to see a lot of those voices still out there and making change in the world. So now that you've left Hong Kong, Regina, is there anybody that you wished you had a chance to interview? You've spoken to the great and the good, I think, of Hong Kong change makers. Is there any that you just didn't, for whatever reason, weren't able to make happen when you were there in Hong Kong?
There's one. There are many, but there's one that came up now right away, but only because I'm going to make it happen. I thought of her now because I'm like, I'm still working on ways to make it happen. Well, it doesn't have to be in person anymore, right? Because we're all doing, actually, ever since I used to record only in person, that was like my rule, right? I had in, I think, season 1, because I really wanted to meet these people, and season 2 as well. But I think that it was not just the pandemic that forced me to do online recordings. It was also the move outside of Hong Kong, outside into the, I call it suburbs. It's not the suburbs. It's still Hong Kong. It's just a little bit of a commute to get into the city. And with 3 kids, time was very limited. So I switched to it was a great evolving from that as well. Like, sometimes when we hold on to something like this is the only way it should be done, it can only be in person. Of course, great. I mean, that was my rule then. And it was filling the goal I had at that time, because one of my big wishes when I first started the podcast was just to get into a new city that I had just moved to, and I wanted to meet people in person and get to know them, network as well. Yeah. So that was fine. But that also, I was in a way almost outgrowing that as soon as I brought in the hosts from the other parts of the world. And also with the vision of growing the channel to have it be a global channel, not a local Hong Kong only, Hong Kong based channel. So in that sense, even though there are a couple of people I haven't had the chance to make that recording in Hong Kong happen, I still will, they are still on my radar. Yeah, they are.
Wow, fantastic. And now that you're in Europe now, in Vienna, is there any organizations, any change makers on your radar now in your new locale?
Yeah, I mean, you meet them everywhere, right? That's the beautiful thing, that no matter where you find yourself in, and this is my invitation to you now, listener, of course, there are always people, no matter in which place you find yourself, that you can be inspired by. And there are in Vienna. I just have to, go across the street here, close to where I live. There is like this co-working space where that is particularly focused on purpose-driven organizations. So just a round through that co-working space, and I will have my lineup for the upcoming guests right there. But of course, it's always, that the slots on our podcast they are exclusive and limited. Yeah, they are very well curated. So I know there will always be more potential guests than actual guests that we can bring on. So I'm being very mindful of that to make sure that we curate the stories for our listeners that will really that will move the needle for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think there's an element of, obviously the stories you tell are very much kind of focused on change makers and celebrating their lives and understanding how they get the inspiration and how they kind of keep driving forward that change. But in the kind of greater making impact space, there are other kinds of stories. And, I think that's one of the area you've branched out and helping others to tell their own stories and launch their own podcasts. And, how has that, I guess, added to your own sense of the impact that you're making?
Yeah, so much. That's so rewarding to see that. Just when we launched season 5, I also launched my online course. That was just at the same moment, really. And to then see how people are not only like running through it and launching, but sticking with it. I think that's the thing that has now really been a great driver for me as well, that they look at it not just as a podcast, because that's what I teach as well. Yeah? That's what I live, that you just take that opportunity to grow yourself, develop yourself, learn something, and make these meaningful connections that move you forward, and honor these moments and these conversations that you have with the people that you want to speak with. And then seeing them doing that, and evolving that and getting so much out of it as well has been wonderful. And I've brought them on the podcast as well. Some of them, not all of them, again, because we cannot make space for all of the stories. But that's been lovely to see how some of my, first graduates have really gone on to host their shows now for several years. And even looking at how can they even diversify and make some more shows in the future as well. So that's wonderful to see what they have committed to for themselves. This, so great.
So there were lots of new things in season 5. We had new podcasts being launched by some of your students. We had new voices from around the world, so many different co-hosts telling their stories and really, really bringing that global theme out there. Can you share with us anything that's coming up for season 6?
Teaser. So I'm developing a really fun and refreshing format right now. And I'm so excited to share it with the team, actually. So I can't and I won't give away too much yet, because the people that have been involved in the podcast like you, Amanda, for the last couple of years, and I've seen it grow and evolve. I love to have you guys just as a sounding board, right? And say, no, here I came up with this fun idea. I think this could be something to, as we are staying true to our values and are committed to showcasing voices that we feel are underrepresented and that should get spotlighted for the amazing commitment they are making in the world in a wide range of topics that will reflect, if we are now talking at the SDG theme, even though we're letting go of that theme, the idea of it to be still working towards the SDGs with whatever impact they're making, that's still going to be there. But the format I'm thinking of is something I want to challenge myself to grow and try out something that I had not yet. And I'll see how it will be received. So, as always, when launching into something new and having this idea that I would love to go for, it's always like we did in the last season finale. There's always the big question mark. What will it lead to? Will it last for another 3 years? Will it be an even longer season than we had so far, or will it
lead to more awards and more sponsored episodes?
We haven't even brought up the awards yet, right?
I know. So it's a lot could come from this new season.
Absolutely,
for sure.
And that's what I'm super excited about, to see how can the podcast also keep challenging the people that are involved in it, right? The creators, but also the guests. And here's the cliffhanger for the format I'm thinking of. So that's gonna be something.
Good. Very exciting. I think engaging guests in a different way could be a very interesting angle. Your guests are always very happy to participate, so I think you'll have lots of happy guinea pigs to try something new with you. So fantastic. Well, that's very, very exciting. Before we wrap up, any other podcast recommendations? You are always on the cutting edge of what to listen to and where to get our content. Any other recommendations? Anybody you want to celebrate?
There would be so many, of course, to recommend. I feel a bit bad just pointing out one in particular, but this is a rather new discovery I had, and this is the podcast Narratives of Purpose, run by Claire Murigande. And what I really resonate with is just the tone of voice she brings. So, well, first of all, she has this amazing, very, very soothing voice that I really find so lovely. And, of course, I think I'm drawn to it also by the guests that she brings on. So it's the same kind of the range of inspiration, I think, that we want to bring at #Impact with people that make a difference in the world and live a purposeful life and work in purpose-driven organizations. That's it's very similar angle. But what I always love is I love listening to other great storytellers and hosts that know how to really listen and let maybe go of some questions they had prepared and just let the conversation happen. And then it's so authentic and just natural and very vulnerable. And that's beautiful, just beautiful conversations. So I can highly recommend to listen to her.
Excellent. I will have to add that one to my list for my commutes. That is the one thing about going back to work. I have a commute again, so I can listen to more podcasts.
That's great. Oh, that's so good.
Very good. Well, excellent. Regina, this has been lovely catching up and reflecting on all of the highs and the highs, quite frankly, of season 5. Everything that was covered, and looking forward to season 6 along with the rest of our listeners.
Yes, I am too. Yeah, look out for some fun behind the scenes coming as well. And of course, as you're listening to this, the 6th birthday of the podcast is also just around the corner, or just happening as we speak. We're in our birthday month, so it's been what a journey, Amanda. I still can't believe
what a journey.
I can't believe we're doing this, it's like wow. What an accomplishment. I'm so grateful, Amanda, again, thank you so much for just being there and listening and having you. I'm trying not to get too emotional now because I've been, I always get so emotional. But I think being emotional is a good thing. But there's definitely, there have been many changes over the years in the podcast, and there have been, experiments and things that we tried out and things that didn't work as well. It's also, there have been lows as well with things that don't working out. But there is a consistent, just through you, by being able to wrap up each season with you, and you've been hosting beautiful episodes as well. So having that as a kind of like a tradition for #Impact, it means a lot to me. It really does. So thank you for making the time and always being there, always for with a supportive voice as well, that just one-on-one, just in private too. It's very precious, and I think we all need these voices in our life, right, when we're doing something. So thank you for being one of those voices for me.
Thank you very much. And I think for me to watch your journey over the years and to be so committed to a very clear purpose and such a noble mission of elevating and helping people tell their stories that deserve to be heard. And it's not an easy thing running a company, running any kind of a startup, running a purpose-driven startup with children, with moving across countries, and dealing with lots of uncertainty during a pandemic. And it's an incredible thing to have watched you juggle it all and keep it going, and really start bringing more and more people on the journey, and launching new podcasts, with your students as well, is fantastic. And thank you for sharing the stories.
And it's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Awesome. It is incredible, isn't it?
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for being here, for all your support, for tuning in, for sharing our episodes with others, for believing in our vision and what we are doing here at #Impact. There's so much ahead, and I'm super excited to be sharing with you all what's to come in the next season. But first, we're gonna focus on celebrating our 6-year anniversary. Sign up for our love letter at hashtagimpact.com/subscribe, where I'm always sharing some behind the scenes of how it's going with the production of this podcast. You get to know me a little bit better. You get to know our hosts a bit better. So sign up for this at hashtagimpact.com/subscribe, and you will be the first to know when we have special events celebrating our birthday, but also celebrating our season 6 kickoff. Okay, that was it. And with that, oh gosh, I always find it so hard to let go. But with that, season 5 is a wrap. Thanks so much for being part of it. Talk to you soon. Bye. Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay. Gosh, now